Solitude is defined as the state or situation of being alone. If we were playing a word association game, a word that I bet would be similar for a large number of people would be loneliness. Even Google definition, however credible that is, has it listed in the similar words section. But there's a distinct difference between solitude and loneliness or other terms describing the state of being devoid of company. While I'm not a linguist, there is something unique about the meaning of the word solitude. The fact that the majority of synonyms to said words are most often used in a negative context. Solitude, for me at least, doesn't quite carry the same vibe. When I hear solitude, I imagine a fortress or a tower, while solitary is still grand and mighty, towering over its surroundings. Maybe it's just the influence of the magnificent capital of Skyrim that I spent a great amount of hours in. Loneliness, though, as it seems, is a yearning for company and being unable to find it, hence the negative meaning. Recently, I found myself spending the majority of my time alone and being unable to explain it, or unable to decipher whether it's good or bad. Initially, I started journaling to understand the experience, while putting things in chronological order to see the root of the current state. But somewhere along the way, I realized I was trying to answer a much bigger question. As I mentioned, recently, I've come to the realization that I became withdrawn. Less time spent with friends and acquaintances, seldom replying to messages, and interacting with people or attending social events has been cumbersome to me. Why would that be? I would lie if I didn't admit that I felt guilty about isolating myself from others, as it is typically expected for young adults especially to be outgoing and social. To give some context, I am a student in a master's program and I recently moved abroad to attend university. Throughout the first semester, it seemed like everything was going well. I had the energy and the drive to socialize, go to parties, attend events, and meet new people. In retrospect, I attribute this to the novelty of the experience, as it was the first time I was left to myself. Seems like the vibe this semester is the polar opposite of what it used to be, as if I became burnt out from socializing. As the year progressed, I noticed that I was isolating myself more and more, missing events, coming up with excuses not to attend. I dread going out if it's not going to the gym or little, which somehow became the highlight of my day, especially if I find something on sale or a new item that contains slightly less calories and more protein that will favor my cutting phase. And this leads me to the next point that potentially contributed to my current situation. As every self-respecting gym goer, I attempted something that is commonly referred to as "cat's gonna go crazy," and I simply put myself in a calorie deficit. While writing this, I'm still going through that phase, and for anyone watching this video who is familiar with the process knows that dip enough into the cut, energy levels plummet, and at a certain point, cognitive abilities decline too, as all you think about is food. This fitness project of mine seemingly further removed me from social settings for the sake of managing my caloric intake. While the calorie deficit is a limiting factor, the major event that I keep coming back to were my academic shortcomings. I practically got smacked over the head with reality and a hefty dose of failure during my first semester abroad. See, the thing is, I'm studying physics, specifically a master's in material science, and the social group I became a part of the first few outings in university consisted mostly of exchange students and people from other programs. By no means do I want to put my field of study above others, as I understand each field has its own quirks and obstacles, and I for one would be less able than an architect to come up with a creative design or an idea, as I have far less experience in the task. Regardless of difficulty, my field of study factually requires a certain amount of time and effort to even be moderately successful at. And here is where I believe the rift between me and my group and the subsequent academic failures occurred. While I wanted to keep up with the outings, I also had the obligation to keep up with my studies. This, from my experience, can cause burnout really quickly. But besides burnout, what suffered mostly from my ambition to keep my social life alive were my grades. My inability to pass any of my 4 courses in the first semester was evidence of that. I failed the first 2 courses by failing my exams. Following that, I skipped the next 2 exams out of fear of failure. That series of heavy failures caused me to doubt myself and scrutinize every little aspect about myself. Was I good enough? Was I able to keep up with my academic goal? Was it simply because I didn't prepare well enough? Thinking back, this must have been one of the most crucial moments that shifted my perspective and made me turn inward even more, as shown by the questions I just asked. The difficult part is that none of these things happened in isolation. It wasn't just dieting, it wasn't just failing exams, it wasn't just adapting to the new country, and at the time it was impossible to separate them, and even now I'm not convinced I can. Now that we went through this compressed journaling attempt of mine, what is the potential meaning of all of this? To someone, it might seem to be just a person dealing with new circumstances and failure in life, and partly I do agree. Moving abroad, attending studies at a new university and trying to incorporate fitness goals into all of this is definitely a draining process that leaves little energy for socializing after. I'm not saying all of that to glaze myself, quite the opposite. I understand that a lot of people are in similar situations to mine. And that's exactly the reason I'm making this video, to see perspectives of people going through similar situations and figure out more. But here's what I find curious about the journey of my self-reflection. When I say I became withdrawn, I don't mean it in a negative way. Some may hear withdrawn and instantly jump to sad or lonely or whatever else is associated with the isolation in question. But to me it seems more peaceful, more quiet, stable, relaxed even. I don't need to check my phone all the time. In fact, my phone is permanently on Do Not Disturb to remove distractions from the peace I acquired. Wholly performative, I know how that sounds, but truly that's the experience I'm going through now. Even my gaming preferences reflect this state. Instead of fast-paced competitive gaming, I turn to single-player experiences, especially older games that tend to focus on complex and interesting storylines. Except Teamfight Tactics, I fucking love TFT, and hate it at the same time. If I ever become addicted to gambling, it's because of high roll strats in TFT. Now this kind of transforms the idea from loneliness, meaning wanting company and not having it, to solace in solitude. Now I just straight up wake up and have my coffee and the day's my oyster. The phrasing is key here, the day is actually mine. This might sound pretty selfish, but I can't deny that's how I feel at the moment, and the fact that I occasionally feel guilty about it says a lot. I acknowledge the fact that genuine human connection is a beautiful thing, and I do in fact desire to have those types of connections. Relationships like these though require an unimaginable amount of work and investment to upkeep, and it shouldn't feel like a drag to upkeep them. On the contrary, almost always when you have a deep connection with somebody, it doesn't feel like busy work to check up on them or do nice gestures towards them or listen into whatever they have to say. You just do it because you like them. I came to realize for myself that it's quite possible that my isolation partly is due to me not forming those deep connections while moving abroad, and I don't think it's authentic to force those feelings. For the time being, I simply enjoy the company of myself. I might be able to satisfy the need for basic socialization at the gym with my group of friends, let's say, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we are ride or dies. Here's where I think the contrast between loneliness and solitude is highlighted the most. For most of my life, I assumed that if I wasn't constantly social, then something had gone wrong. But now that I'm experiencing this period of solitude, I'm questioning that assumption. I'm beginning to wonder whether it's okay to spend periods of our lives mostly in our own company, especially when those deeper relationships simply aren't there yet. In fact, now I believe it is a net positive to spend some time with yourself, to be truly yours, and conserve your identity even in a large crowd. Recently, I came across a collection of essays written by Michel de Montaigne, and his writings specifically resonated with me, as well as an overarching narrative that I took away from his works, or at least how I interpreted it, as I'm no expert in philosophy. Specifically, an essay of his titled Of Solitude really caught my attention. To quote Montaigne directly, "The greatest thing in the world is for a man to know that he is his own." This sentence, at least at the moment I'm writing this, is the closest representation of what I'm actually going through. Montaigne isn't saying remove yourself, quite the opposite. He encourages people to have social relationships, as evident by him writing, "Wives, children and goods must be had, and especially health, by him that can get it. But we are not to set our hearts upon them, that our happiness must have its dependence upon them. We must reserve a backshop, wholly our own and entirely free, wherein to settle our true liberty, our principal solitude and retreat." Holy fuck, I butchered that shit. That was so hard to read. To my understanding, he's simply saying that we should learn to be content with our own company and not lose ourselves when outside things disappear. Moreover, he states that solitude isn't geographical, but it's internal. Someone who is at peace and found true solitude in himself would be comfortable in all settings, social or not. Whether what I'm experiencing is the kind of solitude Montaigne was describing, I honestly don't know yet. I don't think I'll ever know how much of this was moving abroad, how much was failure, how much was my cut, or how much was simply growing up. Maybe trying to separate those things misses the point. What I do know is that I started this journal convinced that something was wrong with me. Somewhere along the way I realized I wasn't trying to escape people, I was learning to enjoy my own company. Whether that's a phase of my life or something more permanent, I don't know. But what I do know that for now, I've stopped confusing solitude with loneliness. So in the end, And the question remains, what was this video trying to accomplish? What was it even about? Is it an essay on solitude? Is it about the self-reflections of a young adult moving abroad? Or maybe even about the authenticity and the depth of the relationships in our lives? If I had to define this video though, I would most likely frame it as an attempt to better understand myself first and foremost, and potentially see how other people that live through similar experiences perceive the situation. One of the reasons I wanted to upload this instead of keeping it as a journal entry on my computer or on Google Docs is because I genuinely want to hear other people's experiences. If you've gone through something similar, or even if you completely disagree with the way I interpreted all of this, I'd really like to hear your perspective. This is an experiment of mine, so comments on the format are also very welcome. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, and all of that YouTuber slang, but most of all, thank you for watching.